summer here at Redfish Lake, salmon return to spawn. They start their lives out as eggs just like this, in gravelly edges of the lake out there. The salmon will lay their eggs in nests called redds, spelled R-E-D-D, and the eggs will spend their winter there in the red. Once the spring occurs, they'll soon hatch as the embryo has developed. The salmon, the little fish that will emerge from this egg, is called an alevin. Alevin will have a yolk sac attached to their stomach, and this sac will feed them for about 6 weeks. Once the fish have used up their yolk sac, they're able to leave the gravel red and swim out just a little bit and use their mouths to eat. At this stage, the fish are considered to be fry, and fry will soon start developing the silvery markings that indicate that they are a sockeye salmon. These fish have now reached their teenage years, where they'll spend their time in Redfish Lake eating and growing as big as they can to prepare for their 925-mile journey to the ocean. When the fish are ready, they'll leave Redfish Lake and go through the Redfish Lake Creek to the Salmon River, to the Snake River, eventually to the Columbia River, which will lead them into the ocean. The fry here will spend about 1 to 2 years preparing for this journey. They'll eat a lot and grow much bigger, and they'll end up going through a process called smolting, where they grow silvery scales and grow much larger into the life stage that we call a smolt. Once the environmental cues tell them it's time to head to the ocean, they'll go down those creeks using the current. They'll go backwards, so tail downstream, and use that current so that they can smell their journey through the rivers, so that when they're ready to come back to spawn a few years later, they can smell their journey and know which way they need to go home.
From Redfish Lake to the ocean is 925 miles, and along that way, the young salmon face many different threats and challenges. One of them is predators. Many larger fish, birds like osprey, and even mammals like mink will try and eat the fish on their journey. Stream conditions, such as temperature and speed, as well as rocks and trees in the water, can also pose threats to the salmon. But the biggest threat of all is the dams. Our fish here at Redfish Lake have to pass through 8 different dams on their way to the ocean. These dams create 3 problems for the salmon. The first of all is that they create a large reservoir behind them. If you remember, the smolts travel down the river with the current tail first. Now in the reservoir, this current stops, and the salmon get turned around, lost and confused, and have a hard time finding their way. This also exposes them to more predation from fish and birds. The second issue is that the temperature rises in these reservoirs as the water stops moving, and salmon are really sensitive to temperature changes. They prefer cold water, about 52 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit. And the higher temperatures in these reservoirs leads to mortality. The third issue with the dams is that many of the fish get sucked through the turbines. That leads to a high mortality, and when they do make it down the fish ladder, they're also exposed to more predation from birds and other animals.
After making it past 8 dams and 900 miles of river, the salmon will arrive at the Pacific Ocean. Salmon will spend a little bit of time in the estuary adjusting their bodies to the salt water. They will then spend 2 to 6 years in the ocean. In the ocean, the sockeye will grow much larger, feeding on shrimp, squid, and smaller fish. They'll follow food sources around the Pacific Ocean. Our Idaho salmon have been traced as far as the coast of Russia and Japan. While in the ocean, the sockeye will also be a food source for whales, seals, and humans. After a few years, the salmon are ready to return to their birthplace to spawn. They have to travel 900 miles and overtake the 8 dams all over again. To help the salmon along their journey, fish ladders have been installed that allow the salmon to incrementally move up over the dam. Once they have passed all 8 dams, they make it back to the Salmon River, where they will enter Redfish Lake Creek, heading up towards Redfish Lake. A weir was installed on Redfish Lake Creek where salmon are trapped, and some are taken to the Eagle Fish Hatchery and spawned there. When salmon are ready to spawn, they turn bright red with a green nose. Male salmon will get a hooked nose and a little humped back so they can fight with other male salmon to protect their territory and their eggs. When the females are ready to spawn, they'll lay on their sides and dig a nest called a redd. They'll deposit their eggs in the nest, and a male salmon will fertilize the eggs with his milt. The cycle will begin again. Idaho salmon have an amazing journey and life cycle. To learn more about it, check out the links below or come and visit the Redfish Visitor Center and learn so much more.